Well, hello there, everyone. It's Carpo here. It's around noon on Friday, my day off, and I thought while I was coherent and functional in the early wee hours of the day, if you will, that I would discuss a topic that really has been nagging at me for a while. I've talked about it a couple times, which is this sort of woke ideology or woke culture, as many people call it. I've talked about this a couple of times, but the reason I'm reluctant is because I think that people don't realize just how ridiculous this has become. And therefore, as a liberal myself, self proclaimed liberal, uh, I stand up for the rights of other people. I stand up against racism. I stand up against bad jokes, in the workplace or out in public. I'm against sexism. I'm against any type of bias or hatred towards other people in general. Something that really bothers me and always has. So naturally, I would be drawn towards any type of a cultural movement that wants to help people that have been marginalized historically. But what I've seen going on is basically the opposite. It's the demonization of people who don't think the way other people think. So, what we have is the social justice warrior movement, if you will, as a belief system. And this is something that I'll admit over the past 5 years, when people say, let's just say, back up for a minute, a lot of folks say that people are waking up to how bad the left is. I want to make this clear. That's not the case. It's that the left has changed, just like the right is always changing. There's an ever fluctuation of different opinions that generally come from the center, but that are exploited by the left and the right. But the left has lost its mind, and they're willing to cater to any type of what they consider to be, for the better of humanity, right? We saw this over the last couple of years with people influencing others and saying you should really take this, medical treatment, or you should do this, or you should do that, or lockdowns are good. Meanwhile, the kids suffered because of it. We see the long-term damage that was done to our economy and society and our children's education, and the marginal effect that any lockdown had. Yet, still many people on the left stand up for it. These are the same ones who are still wearing masks. So be it. To each individual, their own. But I believe that it's become more of a political badge for people to say, I am better than the other people. I am greater than you because I believe in justice for people, and you don't because you don't agree with me. Outrage as a belief system means, and when I say that, what I mean is that in this woke culture, they're always looking to find an enemy. It's like a religion. And when people said that a lot, I've heard that many times and didn't agree. But now I see the associations. I totally understand that people, especially in secular groups, are looking towards a belief system that everyone can join in on. And unfortunately, that means that a lot of others are considered the enemy. There's always a devil. There's always some bad person to point the finger at. I thought back to the 80s. The activists in the 80s, if you want to call them that. I thought about the ELF, I believe it was, the Earth Liberation Front, a bunch of loose-knit, activists that basically firebombed a bunch of equipment out in the woods that was, taking down the forest. And as a young adult, I was on their side to an extent. I mean, I at least cheered it on and said, yeah, we got to stop taking down these trees. But as an adult now, seeing what I've seen, I realize every one of those kids went home to a home that was built with wood in the walls, a framing that was probably harvested from these trees. I live in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of trees. I realize that there's a lot of clear cuts, but many of these activist groups at the time weren't very selective about which companies they went after. Just whatever was good for the press. They'd sit up in the trees, and I thought, good for them, And if they're saving a rainforest or a protected area, I think that's great. But sometimes they'd take it too far. But generally, people were out there for the right reasons. Today, the keyboard warriors can basically sit at home and type about anything they want. but the activists that do go out and do things. It was kind of the, nail in the coffin for activism last month when I saw this article about those two teenagers who went into an art exhibit and they threw tomato soup all over an art piece, a Monet painting. Of course, it was covered in glass, so it didn't damage the painting. But they threw tomato soup all over the painting and then superglued their hands to the wall. And then they claimed that was making an example. From what I could gather, they were trying to say that people are in here looking at this art when they should be paying attention to the burning earth behind them. That's all I got out of their display. And I thought, can't we have nice things? Can't we enjoy things in life too? But that also reflected on certain aspects of the youth. The kind of shit they're being fed, the kind of crap they're being taught in their schools, the kind of crap they're being taught by their parents or by society in general. That they have to be angry and outraged and afraid and scared. Climate anxiety is an actual thing. People who stress about the future of the climate. My God, I'm aware the Earth's going to shit. We're all going to die eventually, but I don't sit and dwell on it or stress about it. There are people in, I think, France or Germany who have been stopping traffic. Maybe it was Australia. Literally, bringing a banner to protest burning of oil, and climate change by sitting in a banner across the freeway and stopping traffic. Which, as we all know, when, thousands of cars are sitting there idling on the freeway, it's definitely good for the environment. The irony is palpable in many of these, movements, but I understand that people in their hearts want to do the right thing, but young people just haven't thought it through yet, and they don't understand the bigger picture, and the big picture is important. The Greta Thunbergs of the world are not going to change people's minds. You can't have somebody up there saying, "How dare you!" and screaming at adults about how we've been burning oil for so long and we've doomed their future. That's not the solution. It's not going to work. Pointing fingers, blaming, calling people a bigot or environmentally damaging or a racist or a sexist, those things aren't going to change how people think. You have to give people a better reason. But what's being overlooked here is how much improvement has been done. And young people don't see that. I've done a lot of research about the history of Portland. The river, the Willamette River, was so polluted at one time. A lot of rivers were like this, that if you even fell in on accident, you should take a shower immediately. And in the Hudson River and other rivers over the East Coast, you were recommended to go in and get shots, as soon as you fell in the river because it was so polluted. We've spent years to clean up and do the right thing to improve our environment. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but we're working on it, and things do change. The same with racism, civil rights, or, suffrage, women being allowed to vote, or just in general, our ability to look at each other differently and say, we're all humans. Show me what you can do as a human being. But it doesn't mean we're not going to have unconscious bias. And I don't think that that's enough. This is why so many liberals are leaving, quote, the left. Because being a liberal does not mean that you're a Democrat. I think that people have a misconception. A classic liberal doesn't just follow, whatever party they follow. It's about following ideas and chasing basically wherever most of the freedom is. It's more of a, somewhere in the middle. Not libertarian, but something like that. But anyway, a lot of public shaming is where we're at right now. Whereas in the past, people could point the finger and maybe be on a newscast talking about Exxon and their oil spills or some company that did some damage. But now it's like these individual billionaires all over the place that are getting the fingers pointed at them, and so they get publicly shamed, or their companies get publicly shamed. So everyone has to fall in line with what others are thinking, whatever the kind of, thing of the day is, or else they get shamed and they get ridiculed and they get trolled and harassed by these keyboard warriors. And often we're being taught, which as adults, that's one thing. But when the kids are being taught that they're unconsciously biased and that there's nothing they can do about it and that you're all racist deep down inside, a lot of people are frustrated about that. And there is a lot of that being taught in the schools, maybe not even always in class, but by the other students. This idea that everyone has some implicit bias and that's a bad thing. I'm going to break it to you that your unconscious bias may be there, but you don't have to succumb to it and think that everyone's bad. You may judge a situation. I saw these horrible commercials trying to teach people about bias. One of them showed these two black kids on this corner kind of looking around, and they were exchanging money kind of sneakily out of their pocket. And then one guy goes, "Yeah, the dry cleaners is down on the corner. Thanks for picking it up for me." And then it went to say, "What did you think was happening? Did you think it was a drug deal?" It's like, well, of course I thought it was a drug deal. They were being all sus, and they were all on the corner looking weird, and it like as if they're trying to deprogram people from being aware of their environment and dangers around them. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's so hard to even talk about without illustrations, showing you the video I'm talking about. But I think that the main takeaway here is that we as adults, we can assess a situation. We can have unconscious bias, recognize it, and then assess a situation all at once. Because I don't judge people on the color of their skin or their genitals. I judge a person on their attitude. Just because I don't like you doesn't mean it has anything to do with your exterior. Guaranteed, I can feel a person's inside vibe, and I know where a person's coming from most of the time. And if a person doesn't resonate with me, I don't care what you look like or sound like. I go by my vibes. So maybe there is some unconscious bias in all of us, but I think that we're all adults here, and judgment of character is okay. It's not always based on what people think it is. So I think adults can acknowledge our differences and work through them. And I also think that thought police basically have this kind of attitude of reverse discrimination, that a person needs to be attacked for their beliefs if they don't agree with what another believes. And as I said, it's kind of an indoctrination of the youth in a lot of cases, and that's why I speak about it. There's a lot of censorship of speech, and often it's not about censoring speech. It's about the omission of certain ideas, which can't be talked about because they're considered hate speech. And as I said, as a liberal, I have mixed feelings. I don't like it when I don't like, for example, what YouTube used to be, where people were screaming about Jews and everything else being the problem of the world, but at the same time, if that's how people feel, then maybe they should have the right to speak. And I'm torn on that issue. I really am. But I don't think that censorship of speech does any real good, or omission of people's personal opinions, as the last 2 years have shown us, 3 years now, that when doctors and scientists are silenced about what they're saying, people aren't able to hear it. And so, to finalize this, it's basically the people I'm talking about, this woke mob, is really a minority of people with really loud keyboards. And I think most of us know this. The thing that fascinates me is how many people buy into it. That I'm guessing, 90% of the people out there really don't buy into these ideologies, but they're afraid to say anything about it because they don't want to be attacked on Twitter. They don't want to be attacked or have their business shut down or get fired over their personal opinions on, being called and accused of certain things. But I think that a lot of these people just can't see the big picture. They don't realize how far we've come, and it's almost shameful that we don't give credit to the progress that we have made as a species and a society, and rather just want to sit and bitch and moan about whether somebody said something that was racist. Humans. Talk to y'all later.